Have you ever wondered if a single old key could change the fate of your entire family? Would you have the courage to unlock the secrets hidden in your past? On a rainy night, with fire alarms screaming and a stranger waiting in the dark hallway, Olivia Carter is forced to ask herself, what is the true cost of safety? And what if the person you trust the most is the one holding the key that could change everything forever? What do you think would happen if that secret finally came to light? Who would lose everything, and who might finally find themselves? Where are you listening from? Which city or country are you in right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. If you're drawn into this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode. Each one is full of new twists and surprises, waiting just for you. Rain hammered the cracked pavement of Riverside Heights, blurring the edges of streetlights and storefronts into smears of gold and green. On the fourth floor, the apartment hallway gleamed in fractured puddles, reflecting bursts of red emergency lights that twisted over the peeling paint. The air smelled of wet concrete and something harsher, burned plastic, a bitter warning curling beneath the sound of sirens. Olivia Carter clutched her daughter tighter, pressing the small, trembling shape of Mia against her chest. The girl's old pink jacket was dotted with cartoon peaches, the left sleeve torn from last month's fall at the playground. Olivia's fingers fumbled with the zipper, useless against the trembling in her own hands. The smoke had crawled under the apartment door before she noticed. First a thin ribbon, then a river, until the living room was a haze of gray. The television still flickered on the far wall, its screen splashed with silent cartoon colors. In the rush, Olivia remembered only two things: the soft thud of her mother's silver key against her own heart, strung on a chain beneath her sweatshirt, and the feel of Mia's small hand threading through hers. Someone shouted down the hall, a muffled warning that vanished into coughing and banging doors. Olivia swung Mia up, 7 years old, already heavy with stubbornness, and ran, bare feet slapping the cold floor. Her purse was still inside, her wallet, the envelope of past due bills. None of it mattered. The world was shrinking to this hallway, these choking lungs, this child. She made it to the stairwell. On the landing, water from the roof leaked in through the broken window, gathering in a puddle by the radiator. Olivia pressed Mia into the curve of her arm, shielding her face, and nudged the door with her shoulder. It stuck. Paint flakes fell like snow into her hair. From behind, the apartment windows began to shatter one by one. Pop, pop, like distant fireworks, letting the rain mix with smoke. Halfway down the stairs, Olivia saw him, a tall man in a long coat, his hair plastered to his forehead, moving with purpose despite the chaos. He paused when he saw her, eyes flickering in the half-light, gray, distant, but sharp as broken glass. For a moment, the world shrank further. Nothing but the rhythm of Olivia's heart and the sound of Mia's quick breaths. The man didn't shout. He didn't rush forward. Instead, he glanced once at the apartment numbers, then back at Olivia and Mia, the tiniest movement of his head betraying recognition. Olivia gripped the handrail. She didn't know him, not really, but something about the set of his jaw, the look in his eyes, tugged at the ragged edge of memory. Had he lived here once? Was he a neighbor, a stranger, a rescue worker? Behind them, the stairwell door banged open and closed, letting in gusts of wind and angry red light. Sirens grew louder, climbing over the sound of rain. Olivia felt the cold sweat beneath her sweatshirt, the prickle of fear and shame. The hallways of Riverside Heights had always smelled of boiled cabbage and cheap detergent. But tonight everything was sharper, more desperate, almost alive. She hesitated at the last flight. Mia squirmed, pressing her face into Olivia's neck, whispering something lost in the roar. Below, the lobby filled with shadows, neighbors gathering in clusters, an old woman with curlers clutching a poodle, a teenager filming the chaos with his phone. Across the street, the blinking sign from Mr. Choi's bakery flickered off and on, a strange comfort in the night. The man in the long coat waited on the landing, eyes fixed on Olivia. He said nothing, only nodded once as if to tell her, "Keep going." Olivia blinked, and for a moment, his face blurred, familiar and foreign, layered with memory. Then she was moving again, feet flying over the last steps, Mia's sneakers banging against her knees. In the lobby, a firefighter shouted instructions, gesturing them outside. The wet night swallowed them, sirens cutting the air into pieces. Olivia stumbled into the rain, chest burning, lungs aching with cold. She set Mia down on the curb. The girl shivered, staring at the building with wide, silent eyes. Smoke billowed from broken windows, black and thick, mixing with rain and the scent of scorched wood. Olivia glanced back, looking for the man in the coat. He was there, talking to a firefighter, his hands gesturing, then stopping, resting in his pockets, his head bent. She noticed for the first time the thin scar across his jaw, the way he seemed both solid and uneasy, as if he belonged to another part of her life. They waited on the curb, shivering, as the firefighters moved in and out, their boots leaving muddy prints on the sidewalk. Above them, the neon sign from the dry cleaners next door buzzed, a moth circling the warm glow. Olivia reached into her sweatshirt and touched the silver key, tracing the engraved word with her thumb. Haven. The world narrowed again. Rain falling in bright needles, sirens echoing through the empty lot. Mia's breath against her arm. A question curled at the edge of Olivia's thoughts, not about the fire or the ruined apartment, but about the man in the coat. Why had his eyes seemed to know her? What old story, buried in the brick and bone of Riverside Heights, had finally come for them tonight? For now there were no answers. Only the slow hush of rain, the shimmer of lights on wet pavement, and the steady, stubborn weight of a child's hand. Before the fire, before Mia's frightened whimpers on the curb, Olivia Carter's world was smaller, circled by routine and memory. 20 years earlier, the same halls echoed with a different life. A little girl's bare feet skidding across linoleum, the clatter of keys in her mother's hands, the warm smell of paper and dust wafting up from the bookstore below. Back then, Riverside Heights was a patchwork of faces, Mr. Choi greeting morning customers with a bow, the Rodriguez twins racing on scooters, Mrs. Parker, her hair always set, her voice always low, slipping upstairs with a folder of neat ledgers. Helen Carter moved among them with purpose, her short hair mussed, the sleeves of her cardigan forever dusted with flour or ink. She owned Haven Books, a cramped shop squeezed between a laundromat and a tailor's. The bell above the door rang with every hopeful entrance, and a green glass lamp glowed in the window at dusk, promising stories and shelter. Olivia would sit on a high stool near the register, swinging her legs, tracing the grain of the wooden counter. Her mother shelved hardcovers and paperbacks in rows, humming bits of old songs, eyes bright even when her hands were tired. In the afternoons, sunlight slanted through the shop front, casting long bars across the carpet. Olivia watched the dust motes drift in golden currents, dreaming up secret worlds between the shelves. That winter, the building held its breath. Rumors crept in, someone talking about a buyout, the management changing hands. Helen brushed them away with a soft, distracted smile. There was always too much to do. Balancing the till, mending the loose banister, wrapping books in brown paper for Christmas. Olivia sensed the strain in small ways, in her mother's silence after the phone rang, the way she stared at the mailbox, unopened letters piling up. Then came the night of the fire. It started somewhere above the shop, in a storage closet crammed with boxes and broken chairs. Olivia remembered the sharp stink, smoke curling under her bedroom door, blue and unnatural. She was 10 years old, pajamas bunched around her knees, heart thudding in her throat. Down the hallway, someone screamed. The building shook with footsteps, shouts, the slam of doors. Helen burst into Olivia's room, lifted her in one swift motion, and ran. Down the narrow stairs, out onto the freezing sidewalk. Somewhere between the bookstore and the street, Helen turned back. A boy was trapped on the landing, his hand pressed against a fogged window, eyes wild and lost. Helen gave Olivia to Mrs. Parker, who was weeping in her robe, and raced back inside. What Olivia remembered most was the silence. Time slowed. Fire painted the upper windows orange. The sirens were far away, lost in the distance. Helen reappeared, coughing, dragging the boy by the arm. For a moment, their shadows stretched across the parking lot, two small shapes swallowed by the glow. The boy stared at Helen, then at Olivia, his lips moving around a name she never heard. Then he vanished into the crowd, gone before the firefighters could even ask his story. Helen didn't talk about that night, not even as winter gave way to spring and the shop reopened with blackened ceiling tiles and the faint scent of smoke that never left. She kept a silver key on a chain, engraved with the word Haven, which she sometimes pressed into Olivia's palm, as if handing her the whole of their survival. She also left behind a wooden box, heavy and locked, the surface carved with curling vines. "Legal papers," she said. Her face turned away. Olivia never opened it. She kept the box under her bed, dust gathering in the corners, the key strung on a chain she wore through every year of school. Helen died young, a soft word in a hard season. Pneumonia, the doctor said. Olivia came home from the hospital to find the apartment cold, the lights off, the bookstore empty. Mrs. Parker brought soup and quietly took over collecting the mail. Mr. Choi fixed the loose doorknob in silence. The building changed hands again, new faces moving in. The old shop shuttered with a sign taped in the window, closed for renovation. Years passed. Olivia grew taller. The silver key never left her neck, though she stopped touching it as much. The wooden box gathered more dust. Mia was born 7 years ago, another rainy afternoon. The hospital window looked down over Riverside Heights. Olivia pressed her hand to the glass and thought of her mother, the bookstore, the quiet strength it took to stay. Now, as rain beats against the curb and the world spins around another fire, Olivia thinks of Helen. Her stubbornness, her courage, the way she gave without asking for anything back. She remembers the boy with the lost eyes, the way he vanished into smoke and memory. The roots of the wound go deep, twisting through walls and floors, down to the bedrock of Riverside Heights. Olivia has never opened the box. She's never dared to ask what, exactly, her mother risked or lost on that winter night. But the key is still there, cold against her skin, waiting. At 4:03 a.m., Olivia Carter stands in her kitchen, the floor cold beneath her socks, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle whistle of the kettle on the stove. Rain taps the window in uneven rhythms. She wraps Mia's lunch, a jelly sandwich, 2 carrot sticks, and the last of the crackers, while watching the clock edge closer to dawn. Mia stirs on the faded couch, a blanket tangled around her knees. Olivia leaves a note taped to the milk carton, just a smiley face and a heart, then packs her own bag, checking twice for the silver key. The walk to the cafe is just 2 blocks, but the air bites, sharp with leftover winter. Most mornings, the world is still sleeping. Only the streetlights and stray cats keep her company. The bakery is warm, fragrant with rising dough. Olivia turns on the radio, tunes it low, a habit learned from her mother. She measures flour and sugar, rolls out pastry, and sets coffee to brew. By 5, her hands are covered in flour, wrists aching, and Mia is curled in the back office, a stack of library books at her side. They've built their own routine. Mia does spelling on an old clipboard, toes tapping along to the rattle of baking trays. Olivia glances over, smiling at the sight, then turns back to her work. Sometimes she wonders if Mia will remember these mornings. The hush before sunrise, the sweet tang of cinnamon in the air, the sound of her mother's quiet humming as she kneads dough. But worry presses in, constant and heavy. The rent notice is taped above the register, a silent threat in red ink. Victor Reeves, the building manager, leaves messages that grow sharper each week. His office smells of stale coffee and disinfectant, a room stacked with papers and unblinking fluorescent light. He never raises his voice, just leans close, lowering his words until they feel like a secret or a threat. Don't forget, Miss Carter. The grace period's over soon. I can't keep holding the place for you, he'd said last Friday, his gaze sliding past Mia coloring quietly in the corner. Olivia nods, always nodding, lips pressed together. She saves every receipt, counts change to the penny, tracks every shift on a calendar full of crossing out and circled dates. Still, the gap widens. Utilities, groceries, the occasional doctor's visit, every bill a weight in her purse, every evening a calculation. Upstairs, life moves on in slow, careful circles. Mrs. Parker, now in her late 70s, shuffles down the hallway with her small shopping cart, always pausing outside Olivia's door to set down a bag of tea or a bundle of flyers from the Tenants Association. She once worked as a secretary for the management company. Her apartment is stacked with boxes of records, decades of leases and contracts filed away in neat, faded folders. Most evenings, Olivia finds Mrs. Parker at her window, peering through binoculars at the alley below, keeping a silent watch over the building's comings and goings. She rarely speaks of her past, but when she does, it's in clipped sentences. Keep your paperwork, make copies, trust the numbers, not the promises. Sometimes, she presses old envelopes into Olivia's hand, with phone numbers and names scribbled in looping script. Just in case, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Mia has taken to leaving chalk drawings on the sidewalk out front. A hopscotch grid, flowers in every color, sometimes a cat with enormous eyes. Olivia lets her play as long as she can before the evening chill sets in. The neighbors nod and smile, but the air is thick with something else. Uncertainty, maybe, or the feeling of waiting for shoes to drop. On nights when sleep won't come, Olivia sits at the small kitchen table, the box from her mother tucked beneath her feet. She traces the silver key, feeling the grooves of the word haven. Once she nearly opened the box, the lock cool and stubborn under her thumb, but stopped herself. The past is another bill she can't afford, another secret she's not ready to hold. Sometimes, late, she watches the building across the street, lights flicking on and off behind rain-blurred glass. A shadow moves behind a curtain, a tall figure, coat draped across a chair. Olivia wonders about the man from the night of the fire, the one whose eyes seem to know her. She wonders who else is awake, counting hours, holding secrets, watching as the world shifts beneath their feet. In the silence, the city hums, radiators click, and water drips through the cracks in the ceiling. The silver key glints in the half-light, heavy as ever, a reminder of promises made and not yet kept. Morning will come soon, bread will rise, coffee will brew, and Olivia will keep moving, step by careful step, through a world that never quite feels like her own, but is, for now, the only place she and Mia have. It's late, almost 9, when Olivia presses the call button for the elevator, her grocery bag heavy with discounted apples, a loaf of bread, and a quart of milk about to expire. Mia's footsteps echo beside her, one shoe untied, her raincoat hood slipping back to reveal a face dotted with raindrops. They've just finished the evening cleanup at the cafe, hands raw from soap, eyes stinging from a long day. The elevator doors open with a metallic sigh, revealing a narrow box that always smells of machine oil and old perfume. Olivia hesitates, checking the faded inspection sticker, but the stairs are worse after rain. She nudges Mia inside, then steps in herself, balancing groceries and an umbrella still dripping onto the linoleum floor. The doors close. They're halfway to the 7th floor when the elevator shudders, grinds, then groans to a stop between floors. The light flickers overhead. Olivia pushes the button again, twice, then presses the help switch, listening to the thin, distant buzz on the other end. Mia squeezes her hand, eyes wide, silent. A moment later, a deep voice breaks the silence from the shadows at the back of the cab. Looks like we're stuck for a while. Olivia turns, heart kicking. She hadn't noticed the man. Tall, shoulders hunched under a heavy coat, a leather briefcase balanced at his feet. He steps forward, tilting his head to catch the sickly light. "I'm Ethan, Blake." He offers the name gently, as if rolling a memory between his teeth. Olivia studies him, searching for familiarity, but finds only a suggestion, lines at the corners of his eyes, a scar that runs along his jaw. Mia tugs at her sleeve, then drops to the floor, tracing circles in the condensation pooling around her sneaker. The cab is silent except for the faint hum of the building and the hollow patter of rain sliding down the shaft. Olivia tries her cell. No signal. She leans against the wall, feeling the ache in her back and the weight of the grocery bag. Ethan kneels beside Mia, careful not to crowd her. "You like to draw?" he asks, nodding toward the invisible patterns she's making on the floor. Mia glances at him, then at Olivia before offering a shy shrug. "My daughter's name is Mia," Olivia says quietly, not sure why she adds the information. Ethan smiles, the motion quick, a flicker. "That's a good name. My mother used to say you should always ask about a person's name first." They sit like that, 3 shadows, each marking time in their own way. Olivia glances at the elevator's ceiling, the dust gathering in the corners. She thinks of how her mother used to say these old elevators always had a mind of their own, stopping just to listen to the secrets people told in the dark. Minutes pass. The air grows thick. Ethan leans his head back, eyes closed, breathing slow. Olivia's thoughts drift to bills, groceries, the next rent payment. Then, in a low voice, she says, "My mother used to run the bookstore downstairs. Helen Carter." Ethan's eyes snap open. For an instant, the cab feels smaller, the air charged. He looks at Olivia as if searching for a piece of a puzzle long forgotten. "The bookstore," he says, voice a little rough. "I remember it. Green lamp in the window, the bell over the door." He hesitates, the words trailing off. "I haven't thought about that place in years." Olivia nods, watching him. "It's been closed for a long time." Ethan shifts, fingers tapping his knee. "Your mother, Helen, she was brave." The word hovers between them, heavy. He doesn't finish the thought. A faint clatter comes from the shaft. Voices, then the scrape of metal. The building's maintenance man calling, asking if everyone's okay. Olivia answers, relief brushing her shoulders, though the elevator remains frozen. The minutes drag. Olivia listens to the hum of the machinery, the quiet breathing of her daughter, the sound of Ethan's thumb sliding nervously along the seam of his coat pocket. She studies his hands, the faint tremor in the left one, the wedding ring missing from the third finger. Something in his posture suggests old injury, old waiting. Outside, thunder cracks. The elevator jolts, then slides downward. The doors shudder open onto the 8th floor, spilling them into a hallway full of flickering light and the distant aroma of burnt toast. They step out together, silent. Olivia gathers Mia, presses a thank you into Ethan's palm, more gesture than word. Their eyes meet. For a breath, Olivia sees something flicker. Recognition, maybe, or a memory surfacing and sinking again. Ethan watches them disappear down the hallway. Olivia feels his gaze on her back, the way she once felt her mother's hand, steady and warm, guiding her through darkness. Later that night, as rain taps the glass and Mia sleeps with her arms flung wide, Olivia turns the silver key over in her hand. She thinks of the old bookstore, the elevator's hush, the strange flicker in Ethan's eyes. She wonders which stories are waiting in the walls of Riverside Heights, which secrets will wake when the rain falls hardest. The morning after the elevator incident, Riverside Heights is pale under a sky of faded blue. Olivia wakes with a stiffness in her shoulders. Maya sprawled like a question mark across the bed. Downstairs, the smell of toast and burnt coffee drifts up from the cafe. There's a ripple in the building's usual rhythm, a hush, a kind of watching. By the time Olivia's set out fresh pastries and started a pot of drip coffee, Ethan Blake appears in the cafe, damp hair brushed back, suit creased as if slept in. He pauses at the counter, orders black coffee. His eyes flick to Mia, who sits in the window, drawing a maze of chalk paths on the steamed glass. Olivia waits, kneading dough, hands steady. She feels Ethan's presence even before he speaks, the way he stands slightly off-center, one foot always ready to move. When he finally approaches, his voice is low. "I wanted to check in. About last night." He glances at the clock, then at the battered rent notice taped behind the register. "And about Victor Reeves. You know he's not the owner here, right?" Olivia raises an eyebrow, wipes flour from her palms. "He acts like it, sends threats every week." Ethan nods, mouth pulling tight. "I work for the company that owns this building. At least I used to before all the buyouts. Victor's pushing people out, trying to clear the place for renovations. That's not what was supposed to happen." Olivia folds the dough, silent. She's heard promises before, watched them vanish into paperwork and red tape. That afternoon, as rain comes and goes in scattered gusts, Mrs. Parker appears at the cafe's back door, an envelope tucked under her arm. She waits until the shop empties out, then sets the envelope on the table. "You should see this," she says, voice hushed. eyes sharp behind thick glasses. Inside, a typed letter. Accusations against Victor, his name paired with Howard Kellerman, a name that rings through the building like bad luck. Kellerman is known for buying up old properties, gutting them, raising rents. The letter accuses Victor of accepting bribes, forging tenant signatures, falsifying work orders. There's no signature, just an anonymous postmark. Olivia scans the pages, heart stuttering. Mrs. Parker nods toward the door. I kept files, all of them, from my secretary days. Victor doesn't know what I have. She lifts her hands, palms trembling, not with fear, but with years of careful waiting. Mia pops her head in, waving a plastic cup, face dusted with powdered sugar. Olivia tucks the envelope away, breathing in the yeasty warmth of the kitchen, the comfort of routine. As night falls, the building's old bones creak. Victor's footsteps echo through the halls, measured and sharp. Olivia keeps her apartment door locked, eyes flicking to the box under her bed, the key at her throat. Later, she sits at the table sorting bills under the yellow kitchen light. Her mind drifts to her mother's silver key. Haven. The word glimmers under her thumb. She recalls the shape of the locked box, heavy, carved with vines, a promise never opened. A thought stirs. Maybe the key fits more than one lock. Maybe it was always meant to open something beyond the box, something left unfinished by her mother. In the hallway, Olivia hears voices, Ethan's low, measured tone, Victor's sharper edge, a scrape of impatience. She leans close to the peephole, watching their shadows slip by, the tension radiating between them. She wonders how many stories these walls have soaked in over the years. Secrets kept, bargains made, old loyalties rusting in the dark. That night, Olivia dreams of smoke drifting under doorways, of her mother's hand pulling her through darkness. In the dream, she turns and sees Ethan, his coat flaring, eyes uncertain. He holds out a ring of keys, but the teeth are bent, useless. Olivia wakes with her heart pounding, sweat cooling on her neck. Dawn comes gray and thin. Olivia presses her palm to the window, watching the world gather itself. She slips the silver key from its chain, traces its grooves, and wonders what her mother would have done if she would have dared to pry open the secrets the building tries to keep. On the street below, Ethan stands beneath a broken lamplight, hands in pockets, head tilted as if searching the building's facade for answers. Across the way, Mrs. Parker's curtains twitch. Somewhere in the walls, old stories hum, waiting for someone brave or desperate enough to listen. Night settles deep over Riverside Heights, thick with the residue of rain and the hum of neon signs blinking in the alley. Olivia lingers at the window, the apartment dark except for the blue glow from the street below. Mia sleeps curled beside her backpack, a parade of stuffed animals wedged around her for comfort. Olivia double-checks the locks, listens for the scrape of Victor's shoes in the hallway. The anonymous letter from Mrs. Parker sits beneath her mug, edges creased from hours of reading and rereading. The questions circle in her head. How much does Victor know? How far would he go? The next storm sweeps in fast, sheets of water pounding the windows, wind singing down the chimney. Olivia leaves Mia with Mrs. Parker for the evening, inventing an errand about bread and milk, though she has no intention of shopping. Instead, she slips down the stairs, every footfall echoing in the empty corridors. The garage smells of gasoline and old leaves. Her sneakers squeak across the concrete. She pauses near the vending machine, the world outside blurred by rain-streaked glass. Somewhere above, a door slams. Maybe just the wind, maybe not. She heads for the stairwell. A voice stops her, low, unfamiliar, somewhere between warning and threat. "You don't want to get involved in this, Miss Carter." A man steps from the shadows, umbrella folded, the glint of a gold watch flashing at his wrist. Olivia stands her ground, fingers tightening around her phone in her coat pocket. "Excuse me?" He takes a slow step forward, face obscured by the hood of his jacket. "Victor doesn't want trouble. There are easier ways to leave. Take your daughter and go." She hears the click of a lighter, smells the tang of tobacco. The man's gaze lingers, not hostile, not kind, just business. His voice drops. "Some stories are better left in the past. You dig too deep, you'll regret it." She doesn't answer, just holds his gaze. The rain hammers the tin roof above. A car alarm blares, then sputters into silence. The man flicks his cigarette onto the wet floor, its ember dying. He turns and melts into the darkness, leaving Olivia rooted in place, every muscle thrumming. She counts to 20, then steps back into the stairwell, heart pounding. She knows now that Victor is watching, maybe more than just watching. Back upstairs, Mrs. Parker sits by the window, knitting needles clacking, radio playing something old and slow. Mia's laugh drifts from the bedroom, muffled by pillows. Olivia sets her bag down, voice calm as water. "Everything okay?" Mrs. Parker glances up, glasses glinting. "Heard anything interesting?" Her tone is pointed, too knowing. "Nothing that matters," Olivia lies, wiping rain from her forehead. She sits at the table, staring at the old box beneath the radiator. The key on its chain weighs heavy against her chest. Later that night, Ethan knocks softly, holding a folder, his expression uncertain. He steps inside, glancing at Mia's drawings taped along the hallway. Cats, trees, a lopsided building crowned with a green lamp. He sits at the kitchen table, voice low. "I need to tell you something." He rubs his hands together, looking for words. "Your mother, Helen, she saved me. All those years ago. The fire. I was the kid she pulled out." He closes his eyes, the memory raw. "I never thanked her. Never knew what happened until much later. I spent years trying to forget." Olivia listens, hands in her lap, the silence pulsing between them. "You were the boy?" she asks, barely above a whisper. Ethan nods, eyes shining under the kitchen light. "I promised her, that night, I'd protect this place. But I didn't. When my company nearly went bankrupt, I sold my shares to Kellerman. I thought I had no choice. That's how Victor got control." Olivia absorbs the confession, mind racing. She sees again her mother's back as she vanished into smoke. The way Helen pressed the silver key into her hand. A promise heavier than memory. Ethan's voice trembles. "I want to help, but I don't know how anymore." A heavy stillness settles over the room. Outside, thunder rolls, shaking loose the smell of rain-soaked pavement. Olivia turns the key in her fingers, studying the carved word. Haven. She thinks of the stranger in the garage, the warning in his voice. She thinks of Mrs. Parker's files, Ethan's broken promise, her mother's courage. Each thread is tangled with the next, pulling her deeper into the maze of Riverside Heights. Mia calls from the bedroom. Olivia rises, hands steady. The future is a locked room, waiting for the right key. For now, she keeps moving, step by careful step, toward whatever the night will bring. Olivia waits until the hallway quiets, the usual late-night arguments drifting through the walls, footsteps softening as doors close. She sits cross-legged on the kitchen floor, the old wooden box in her lap, the silver key cool and certain in her hand. The word haven seems to shimmer in the low light. For years, the box has gathered dust under her bed, a silent witness to everything she didn't dare remember. She hesitates only a moment before turning the key. There's a click, soft, almost gentle, as if the lock was waiting for this night. The lid creaks open, the hinges stiff. Inside, the box smells of cedar, paper, and something fainter, maybe the last trace of her mother's perfume. There are documents, thick with stamps and notary seals, property deeds, original blueprints of Riverside Heights, edges curled and browned with age, letters folded and refolded, her mother's name written in a steady, slanting hand. Helen Carter, proprietor. A photograph slips free. Helen in front of the bookstore, hair windswept, the green lamp glowing above her shoulder. Olivia lifts a heavier envelope marked "For Olivia, if ever you need to stay." She doesn't open it yet. Instead, she scans the deeds. Her eyes catch a detail, a clause buried in legal phrasing, naming Helen Carter as the rightful owner of the building. Another document signed years ago transfers that ownership to Olivia should anything happen to her mother. The apartment seems to expand and contract at once. She traces the notary seal with her thumb, pulse thudding in her ears. All this time, the proof was waiting, just beneath her fear. A knock breaks her focus. Ethan stands at the door, his hair damp from the hallway. In his hand, a battered file folder. Olivia lets him in, her eyes flicking to the documents spread out across the floor. Ethan sits beside her, knees drawn to his chest, watching as she sorts the paperwork. "I remember that night," he says, voice soft. "The fire. Your mother. She told me to run. I did. I left her." His words tangle, caught between memory and regret. He lifts a faded letter from the pile, a promise, scrawled in hurried pen. "For Ethan, if you ever need to come home." Helen's handwriting, spare and sure. Ethan closes his eyes. "She asked me to protect this place. I said yes. But when the company was on the edge, when Kellerman offered to buy my shares, I said yes to that too. I thought it was survival. I told myself I'd fix it someday." Olivia spreads the deeds, the legal filings, the transfer forms. "You broke your promise," she says, not harsh, just factual. Ethan doesn't flinch. "I know, that's why I'm here." The air between them thickens. Outside, the city pulses. A siren, a barking dog, the rattle of an old radiator coming to life. Olivia hands Ethan the envelope marked for her. "Read it," she says. He opens it carefully. Inside, Helen's words, directed to Olivia, but meant for anyone carrying the weight of Riverside Heights. "This building is a haven. Don't let them take it. Not for money, not for fear. Trust the people who stay, not the ones who leave. And when the world presses close, find the courage to hold your ground. Home is not walls or deeds. It's what you dare to protect." They sit in silence. Ethan runs a hand over his face. "You don't owe me anything, but if you'll let me, maybe I can help make things right. The company has lawyers, but so does Kellerman. If you want to fight, you'll need help." Olivia stands, the papers trembling slightly in her hands. Her eyes settle on the green lamp in the photograph, her mother's gaze level and unafraid. "If you want to help," she says, "it has to be all the way. No more secrets." Ethan nods, voice rough. All the way. For the first time in years, Olivia feels something shift. Not relief, not yet, but the sense of a door opening, air moving in a room long sealed. She thinks of the tenants, Mrs. Parker's careful record-keeping, the children chalking the sidewalk, the way everyone looks out for each other in small, silent ways. She looks at Ethan, older, heavier with regret, but still here. A piece of the building's history, flawed and unfinished. The world outside is still dangerous, still hungry. But tonight, for the first time, Olivia can see a path. Not just survival, but possibility. She places the key back around her neck. "Let's see if we can save this place," she says. Ethan stands, tall against the kitchen light. Their shadows spill across the floor, overlapping, as if the building itself is listening. Somewhere, deep in the walls, the past stirs, a promise reclaimed, a story not yet finished. In the days that follow, winter settles more heavily on Riverside Heights, thickening the shadows and dulling the sun to a dim smudge behind clouds. Snow gathers in the window wells, and the breath of the radiators is the only warmth in the halls. Olivia moves through her days with a sharpened vigilance, each sound in the hallway now charged with meaning. The stutter of a distant elevator, the faint click of Mrs. Parker's door, the measured tread of Victor's shoes up and down the stairs. She doesn't sleep much. When she does, dreams coil tight. Her mother's green lamp swinging in an endless night, papers burning to ash, Mia's laughter snatched away by smoke. By morning, the world feels thinner, her own reflection wavering in the kitchen window, as if she could slip through and vanish without a trace. Then, one evening, the fire alarm shrieks, high, discordant, slicing through the static of exhaustion. Olivia jolts upright from the kitchen floor, where she's been sorting papers and bills, the silver key pressed flat beneath her palm. For a breathless second, the world hangs suspended. Only the alarm, the thick smell of something burning, Mia's footsteps thudding across the linoleum. She throws open the apartment door. Smoke billows from the stairwell, acrid and dense. Down the hall, neighbors tumble out in nightclothes, voices rough with confusion and fear. Olivia grabs Mia and her backpack, the box from under the bed, and races down the stairs. In the chaos, she sees Mrs. Parker struggling at her door, her cane caught on the threshold. Olivia doesn't hesitate. She hands Mia the box, sprints back, and helps Mrs. Parker down the hallway, step by aching step, as the smoke thickens around them. Outside, sirens wail, a cruel echo of years ago. This time, Olivia doesn't look for rescue. She moves, steady and sure, the way her mother once did, guiding Mrs. Parker down into the sharp, freezing air. Firefighters swarm the building, voices barking commands, water spraying in bright arcs against the orange glow of the flames. In the parking lot, tenants cluster together, some wrapped in blankets, others hunched over phones, recording the scene with shaky hands. Mia sits on the curb, the wooden box clutched to her chest, shivering but dry-eyed. Word ripples through the crowd. The fire started in the archive storage, a room on the first floor that's been locked for years. Some say it was an accident. Others mutter about arson, an attempt to destroy the very documents Olivia just uncovered. Olivia says nothing, holding Mrs. Parker's hand as the older woman coughs, her breaths wet and labored. Later in the hospital, Olivia sits beside Mrs. Parker's bed. The room hums with fluorescent light, the machines a quiet counterpoint to the silence stretching between them. Mrs. Parker's skin is ashen, her hands curled loosely over the hospital sheet. Olivia traces the lines of her palm, remembering all the quiet ways the woman had held the building together. Paperwork, phone calls, the silent defense against Victor's endless schemes. "Don't let them win," Mrs. Parker whispers, voice thin, barely a thread. Olivia nods, pressing the silver key into her own palm, as if it could anchor her to something solid. With Mrs. Parker in the hospital, and their own apartment uninhabitable from the smoke, Olivia and Mia take shelter in the cafe's storeroom. It smells of coffee grounds and yeast, the walls lined with sacks of flour and sugar. Mia makes a bed of jackets and paper towels, curling up with a paperback she found behind the counter. Olivia sits at the back table, papers fanned out before her, the green lamp from the old bookstore vivid in her memory. Ethan calls, leaves messages she doesn't answer. He sends texts, updates about Victor, legal advice, questions that remain unanswered. Olivia can't bring herself to reply, can't shake the suspicion that clings to her like the smell of smoke. The world feels muffled, distant, as if she's moving underwater. She keeps to the rhythms she knows. Morning baking, afternoon phone calls, evenings combing through what remains of Mrs. Parker's files. Outside, the sky sags with snow, the city choked in silence. Time slips and shudders. Olivia dreams of doors closing, of being trapped behind glass while the world burns on the other side. She wonders if this is what her mother felt, fighting a battle she never wanted, the burden of a legacy pressed into her hands by accident or fate. One evening, Olivia watches Mia draw a new picture. Two stick figures standing under a green lamp, the outline of a building rising behind them. Mia presses the drawing into Olivia's hands, her eyes searching for something unnamed. Olivia hugs her close, the weight of the key pressing between them. She doesn't have answers. Not yet. Only the memory of her mother's words. Find the courage to hold your ground, and the thin thread of hope that something, somewhere, can be saved. Outside, snow falls, soft and relentless, hiding the scars of the fire, covering the city in a hush that is almost peace. Winter sunlight glances off the courthouse windows, catching on wind-blown flecks of ice. Olivia stands on the broad steps, fingers numb around a folder of documents. The silver key hangs inside her coat, pressed to her heart. Around her, Riverside Heights tenants cluster together. Mr. Choi with a thermos of tea, the Rodriguez twins in oversized jackets, Mrs. Parker's niece clutching a sheaf of signed affidavits. Their faces carry traces of sleepless nights and smoke-stained memories. But today they look ahead, eyes set on the courthouse doors. Mia stands at Olivia's side, gloved hand wrapped tight around her mother's. Olivia stoops to tie Mia's bootlaces, the motions steady and precise, one small comfort that still belongs to her. Inside, Ethan paces near the entryway, suit newly pressed, expression uncertain. He catches Olivia's eye, lifts a hand. The gesture is more question than greeting. She gives a brief nod. They file through metal detectors, past the echo of official voices and the scent of lemon polish on marble floors. Olivia leads her neighbors to a bench, hands them copies of testimony. The air is thick with murmurs, Victor's lawyer barking into a phone, Mrs. Parker's niece reading over papers, Ethan consulting quietly with the building's attorney. In this place, stories are measured in pages, in signatures, in the slow grind of due process. When their case is called, Olivia stands before the judge, her voice low, rough-edged from sleepless nights. She speaks not as a victim, but as a custodian. She tells of her mother's life, of the bookstore that was more than business, of how Riverside Heights grew from kindness and struggle, from Friday night dinners on the stoop, from Mrs. Parker's quiet watching. She tells of fires past and present, of documents nearly lost to smoke, of a key handed down with trembling faith. She names Victor's threats, Kellerman's bribes, the careful record-keeping that survived despite every effort to erase it. Ethan takes the stand, hands shaking, eyes unwavering, he confesses how he sold his shares, how his need for rescue became someone else's undoing. "I broke my promise," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm here to make it right. I forfeit my shares. I want them restored to the Carter family, as they should have always been." The courtroom listens. Some lean forward, others shift, restless. The judge's eyes are unreadable, hands steepled. Mrs. Parker arrives, her face wan but intent, an oxygen tank trailing beside her. She testifies, voice strong, that the building was meant as a haven, that neighbors are more than signatures on a lease. She produces records, dates, the unsigned checks Victor hoped would vanish. In the hours that follow, the city's story emerges in fragments, voices of tenants who found shelter and loss in equal measure, a ledger written in Helen Carter's careful hand, the brittle silence of a community asked to choose between fear and belonging. The judge retires. Tenants cluster in the corridor, sharing sandwiches, trading memories. Ethan sits apart, head bowed, tracing the pattern of the floor with one shoe. Olivia joins him, slides over a cup of tea, says nothing. There is a comfort in this silence, the kind that exists between people who have seen each other's failings and not looked away. Mia curls beside Mrs. Parker, listening as the old woman weaves stories of the building's past, how the green lamp stayed lit through the blackout of '03, how Helen once let a family sleep among the bookshelves during a blizzard. The courthouse air is dry and cold, but their circle is warm, voices overlapping, one thread braided into the next. Finally, the judge returns. The ruling is brief. Olivia Carter is named the rightful owner of Riverside Heights. The company is ordered to cede control. Victor is removed, pending further investigation. There is no applause, just the sound of people exhaling, shoulders easing. Outside, the city feels sharper, more real. Olivia steps onto the sidewalk, Mia tugging at her sleeve. Ethan follows, pausing at the top of the steps. "Thank you," he says, but his gaze slips sideways, uncertain. Olivia just nods. "We all have things to fix." Mrs. Parker leans on her niece, raising a hand in farewell. Tenants disperse, some to jobs, some to waiting cars, some just walking, dazed and lighter, into the new day. That night, Olivia sits at her kitchen table in a freshly painted apartment. The box is open, its contents filed and safe. She writes a note, tucks it into the box for Mia. "Home is what we make, not what we inherit." She stands at the window as snow begins to fall, pale and silent, blanketing Riverside Heights. Across the courtyard, lights flick on, one by one, a constellation of belonging. Spring arrives quietly in Riverside Heights, its promise slow to unfold. The city is softer now. Sunlight sifts through new leaves, catching in puddles that scatter rainbows along the sidewalk. Painters have covered the scorch marks on the hallway walls with fresh, pale blue. The banister, once splintered, now runs smooth beneath Olivia's palm as she climbs the stairs with Mia after school, the smell of sawdust and wet paint lingering in the air. In the mornings, Olivia sips coffee on the balcony, the city's noise softened by distance and glass. From up here, the courtyard below looks like a small world all its own. Mr. Choi's bakery sign flickers, neon pink against the pale dawn. The Rodriguez twins kick a soccer ball back and forth, their laughter bouncing off the walls. The new building cat, a gray and white stray with a clipped ear, circles Mia's feet, winding around her ankles, purring as she giggles and runs. Inside, life slips into new rhythms. Olivia sorts mail at a kitchen table free of rent notices and eviction threats. She keeps the silver key on a hook above the stove, where sunlight glints on its curve every afternoon. The wooden box is closed, tucked away on the bookshelf, but sometimes she touches its lid, feeling the weight of stories folded inside. On the wall, Mia's latest drawing, a tall building lit with a green lamp, people clustered beneath it, hands joined. Neighbors gather on Saturday mornings for coffee and donuts. They talk about repairs, plant tomatoes in the courtyard, swap stories, some old, some quietly hopeful. Mrs. Parker returns, her cane thumping lightly as she surveys the new paint and fresh tiling in the lobby. She has a new folder tucked under her arm, and her nod to Olivia is brisk but approving. One afternoon, Ethan visits, his steps careful on the newly mopped floors. He carries a box of papers, his final transfer, legal details in careful stacks. He stands by the window, watching Mia chase the cat in loops around the balcony, sunlight dancing on the glass. "I should have come back sooner," he says, voice almost lost in the hum of the street below. Olivia doesn't answer right away. She pours coffee, sets out 2 cups. They sit together at the kitchen table, silence thick and companionable, broken only by the clink of ceramic, the slow ticking of the wall clock. "I used to think heaven meant a place where nothing could hurt you," she says at last, tracing the rim of her cup. "But maybe it's just the place you choose to stay, even when it hurts." Ethan nods, not quite meeting her eyes. He slides a thin envelope across the table, a letter from Kellerman, the final relinquishing of all claims. "You built something here," he says. "That's more than I ever did." She turns the envelope in her hands, then sets it aside. "It's not just me." From the hallway comes the sound of children running, the low boom of a door slamming, someone's radio drifting out a half-remembered tune. The building breathes, a little louder now, a little less afraid. As weeks pass, Olivia oversees renovations floor by floor, insisting on fair rent, on sunlight in every apartment, on small kindnesses that accumulate over time. The old bookstore space on the ground floor is cleaned out, its windows washed and lamp rewired. Mia helps her arrange battered tables, stacks of donated books, a single green glass lamp lit in the window once more. Some nights, Olivia sits behind the counter, reading aloud while neighbors drop in, drawn by memory or the promise of something new. On the first warm evening of May, Olivia and Mia sit on the steps, a breeze curling around their ankles. The building cat perches on the rail, tail flicking. The sky is streaked with gold and violet, the city alive with distant traffic and laughter. Across the way, Mrs. Parker waters a row of tiny tomato plants. Ethan passes by, offering a half wave, lingering just long enough for Olivia to nod in return. They watch Mia draw chalk circles on the sidewalk, a new hopscotch grid snaking through the courtyard. For a moment, Olivia closes her eyes, listening to the simple hush of home, the shuffling of feet, the clatter of dishes through open windows, the familiar creak of pipes behind the walls. In that hush, Olivia's mother lingers, her voice in the turn of a key, the shape of a green lamp glowing at dusk. Mia's laughter drifts up, light and sure, and Olivia feels the weight of the past ease for the first time. The world isn't perfect. Paint chips, bills still come, old wounds ache on rainy days. But Olivia stands in the doorway, a cup of coffee warming her hands, and watches as evening gathers around the building she now calls her own. A home, she thinks, is not a promise kept or broken, but the courage to stay when everything says leave. She looks out over Riverside Heights, the sky deepening to blue. Mia leaps across the chalk lines. The cat darts after her, and the green lamp in the window flickers. A quiet signal, steady against the coming night. And somewhere, just beyond the light, the story waits, unfinished, but safe for now.